Hello, everyone. We're here today with Talk It Up Tuesday. I'm here with Kristen Flo, our clinical manager, and we're going to be talking about animal-assisted therapy. But before we get started with our conversation, I just wanted to tell you a little bit about the Turning Point. We serve survivors of sexual violence here in the North Texas area. We provide education, counseling, and advocacy for all those in need. We have a 1-800 crisis line that's available 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. That number is 1-800-886-7273. Well, welcome, Kristen. I'm excited to talk to you today.
I'm excited to be here. Thank you for inviting me on.
Well, maybe you can start out by telling us just a little bit about what is animal-assisted therapy.
Yes, I would love to. So just to introduce myself, my name is Kristen Flo. I am the clinical manager here, so just really grateful to be here. We have a great clinical program. If you want a chance to go take a look at some of that, go to our website and see what we have to offer. We have groups coming out right now, so I just wanted to shout out about that. Very proud of what we're producing this cycle. So please join if you would like to join our groups. Um, One of the really cool things about this is that we are actively getting into animal-assisted therapy as we are talking about this on Talk It Up Tuesday. We have a lot of developments going on in our agency. So I'm really excited to talk about this today and just get the word out of what we're doing and why it is so effective for survivors. So animal-assisted therapy. What is animal-assisted therapy? So animal-assisted therapy uses dogs, other animals. It can be cats, but a lot of times we see horses, dogs, whether they are trained service animals or not, that animal-assisted therapy is beneficial in so many different ways. It can help people. There's tons of research out there that it can help people from physical and mental health conditions. The body releases really feel-good hormones whenever we are with an animal. That's safe presence, oxytocin, serotonin. That can also produce a stress relieving response. So kind of a sense of internal safety that is pretty specific to a very safe human or a safe animal. So, and it is particularly helpful for healing from trauma. Um, so a little bit about that. Um, so humans are usually the ones that have hurt us, uh, generally. And this hurt can cause significant changes in our nervous system that are adaptive in the moment, but work against our fulfillment later in life. So suppressing emotions because our parents are incapable or traumatized themselves turns into not knowing who I am or not having needs, or even having a critical view of our most authentic emotional selves, and even emotions themselves we can be critical of. So we develop a very big lack of space for our authenticity and emotional body. So essentially we learn to be who we need to be in our families or through traumas that we endure in order to survive. But when we meet an animal, a dog, a horse, a cat, they have no agenda. They have no intention besides honesty, authenticity, safety, security. They don't want us to pretend or hold in our true self. They've got an intuition about it that says, I know you're not being real with me here. And that's when they feel the safest, is when we're most authentic, and they can feel that. And I think we too have that within us for other humans. We can get red flags inside of us if we don't feel like someone is being honest with us or just not presenting their whole self to us as we see them. So the more we can safely exist in the world, the more healing that we can experience. So to experience this with an animal can actually help rewire our nervous system and heal some of those attachment wounds or trauma wounds that we've held even for a very, very long time.
So that's why I guess we see a lot of it's kind of popular right now. I think like the vet service dogs those suffering from PTSD, but it also applies specifically for survivors of sexual assault as well, correct?
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. Um, so in particular, survivors of sexual violence are at a higher risk of developing symptoms that impact our lives. So, we can have higher rates of symptoms of like psychosis or dissociation. Those are all feelings of unreality, chronic fear that may not match with the current situation, but is overwhelming, a fragmentation of ourself inside. And a lot of times this because of different reasons that shame has a big part in how we perceive sexual violence and how we respond to it. So a lot of times people divide kind of their good self, which is a lot of times what the world wants from us, which is less emotional and less authentic. And then the bad self, which is actually a lot of who we are, but has gone through a lot of trauma and has been suppressed. So the amount of separation and fear and lack of safety inside is at a much higher rate if someone has experienced sexual violence. And it's even more of a reason to use animal-assisted therapy because many times even coming into a counseling session or an intake session, we do not have the capacity to let our guard down even a little bit because this is another human and I don't know what their intentions are. And so that is something that if you can work from the bottom up, which is a lot of trauma-informed approaches, then we can cultivate safety in the nervous system to be able to open that space for healing.
So what does it look like actually to have an animal assisting in therapy? Is it just the presence of the animal, or is there more involved in that in a typical session that you might envision?
Yes. Well, sometimes it is just the presence of the animal. A lot of times there will be a handler of the animal. So either if it's a dog, it'll be the handler of the dog or the horse, who's someone who's very close and knows the horse very well. So they can teach us things about how we communicate with them and how we show respect to them. Um, and really, part of this is a very relational aspect. So anything that you see in animal assisted therapy will be about connection and safety and about whenever we are interacting with the horse, how do we align our intuition and what we know about approaching them in a safe way? And how do we cultivate a connection between us, given we don't speak the same language? We can't tell them exactly what's going on to try to get validation or anything like that. And so, whenever it might be brushing an animal or petting an animal, or even just sitting next to the animal and allowing ourselves to down regulate and get a little bit calmer and seeing how that affects the animal next to us. There is so much going on interpersonally or with between human and horse or human and dog. There's so many unspoken things that are happening. And so there's so many different things that you can do. And horses, we can walk them. We learn a really great thing that's called horse speak. So anyone out there who's interested in learning about that communication of animals, especially horses, gives a very, very rounded view of how to communicate in an intuitive way and nonverbal. And this is really so much of how we communicate with each other, but we forget those things and we forget to detect those things and trust those feelings that we get and align with them. So there is a lot of different ways that people do this, but it is all about being connected, and not doing a whole bunch of stuff, not necessarily barrel racing or things like that. Maybe, but not generally.
Yeah, no, that's great. That kind of helps sets the stage a little bit. So can you tell me a little bit about your experience with animal therapy, like where you first sort of learned about this approach, and then maybe how you see it fitting in here at the Turning Point with the work that we do on the clinical side?
Yes, I would love to. Um, so my experience really hasn't been very extensive. As far as I've had a lot of experience with animals. I've participated in animal assisted therapy myself. Um, and I have great relationships with my own animals. So it's always been a passion of mine and a desired future, if you will. Um, Whenever I was in school for the counseling profession, I came across many different types of therapies and a couple of equine therapists who are trained in um, a specific way to be able to provide equine assisted therapy to their clients. Recently, we did collaborate with a developing space at Coyote Creek Stables, and we had a small event just to see how it would go and what the land was like. And we are so excited about the outcome of that. And I could just see we invited our counseling team as well as a few clients and then a few staff and volunteers. And we've gotten so much great feedback on that at the end of it, there sure was a lot of connection and a lot of safety that was gathered together. And we are so excited to have this as part of our program. We know in a trauma-informed way that what we want to provide as a clinical team, individual counselors and groups, is that we want our clients to experience what it's like to feel soothed, safe, secure, and seen. And, we know this all the way back from being a little baby. These are the things that we need, whether it is just in a single moment or in a vulnerable moment or after a trauma, that those are the things we need: safety, and we need to feel seen. So this has a very, very big effect on how we relate to ourselves and how we're able to heal. So providing the horse's presence literally can provide these four things all at once. If we let ourselves step into that energy, we can feel soothed. It's going to be okay. I'm going to be okay if I bring up this painful truth in the presence of this horse. I will not be hurt or judged by this being. I will not be abandoned either. And horses just want to connect in safety, respect, and attunement. And that's really what we want as well. But a lot of times, generational trauma and attachment trauma, all of those things can get in the way of us actually having the opportunity of a safe nervous system and a safety within ourselves that we can actually grow and be ourselves. They don't respond well, horses, to being criticized or fear induced or oppressed. And actually at these stables, there are several horses who have had those experiences that are or have been rehabilitated and worked with. And the way they did that was all through intuitive presence and learning the horses triggers, learning how to cultivate safety with them. um, there is no mind games or mental manipulation or anything like that. It's all about respect and healing. So, and one of the cool things, like while we were there, we heard one of the trainers or handlers talking about a horse that before was really stuck in kind of a flat, suppressed affect, like really didn't make any signals whenever they were distressed or didn't want to do something. And over the course of working with them, that's what we can see in humans too, with like treatment resistant depression. Our whole self just says, I'm just going to collapse because I keep asking for what I need and it's not respected. And so when we see a horse go into that mode of like, I'm just going to take it. I'm just going to do what they ask me to do, be who they want me to be. And they worked with this horse to now the horse will turn away when it doesn't want to do something. It gives her a signal, even if it's a small signal. It knows how to say no and to show that. And so it's advocating for itself. Not only is it a horse that's been through immense pain and trauma and crazy training that should never be allowed, she's also saying no now. She's sensitive, intuitive, aware, and she has the ability to trust the handler that she's with, that she won't be hurt. And so it was just a really, really great parallel to a lot of what trauma healing really is, and being able to kind of unbury ourselves from all the suppression and ideas that really weren't ours to begin with, or prevented us from growing into who we're really meant to be.
Yeah, I was so privileged to be a part to participate in that event, and it was just beautiful to watch the connection between the horses, between the people, between the safety and the expansiveness of the environment. So I look forward to hopefully that this is not a one-time event, and we can continue our partnership with Coyote Creek Stables and collaborate in some more ways to help support survivors. But for those survivors who maybe don't have access to a horse or are not in a particular therapy that where they can afford something like equine therapy, are there some principles of assisted animal therapy that they could use in maybe in their own space, or even with a pet, for instance, with a companion animal?
Absolutely. Absolutely. And animals can teach us so much, honestly, that a lot of times, because humans have such the sophisticated prefrontal cortex going on, that we forget about the simple ways of just being. And so I encourage everyone to learn more about the communication that animals have with humans and the way that we show we like something, we don't like something, we're uncomfortable, we're comfortable. Get to know those little ways that you can attune to them, and that will allow you to experience that really special sense of safety where they say, I know that you're putting in the effort here. I can tell that you're attuned to me, and so I'm going to be safe with you. I don't have to think that you're going to do something unpredictable, because I know that you understand me and what I'm doing. So learn about animals. No animal responds well to criticism or fear. The right way is always to attune to them and get to know what they need to do well. And if you have an animal, um, do a little more experimenting with the safety that you provide them, and just pick up on their signals. Another really great thing that people do is there are animal shelters everywhere that would love to have volunteers. And, and this is something that you can go and you can attune to this little, or this being that really needs some help, and provide a sense of safety in there. From that sense of safety, they'll be able to be adoptable into a home. They'll be able to trust a human, whereas maybe beforehand all they had were negative experiences of being scooped up off the street or something like that. So it's very mutually beneficial to go to a shelter, do volunteer even once a month, something like that. And I'm not partnered with them, but I definitely support doing all of that. And really anything with nature. We have wild animals everywhere that we can attune to. Birds, squirrels, the more that you attune to them, the closer they will come to you. That indicates that we are safe. Um, and then also just anything on, animal videos, to be honest, that either whether it's learning about animals or it's something that you are just seeing them, cute videos, seeing them interact with each other, we can actually get a feeling in our nervous system of safety just by watching YouTube videos, and digesting the beauty and the connection and nature that's in that video. So I've definitely encouraged people to do that. Pay attention to the pain, but also let yourself watch some good animal videos.
That's great. I would never have thought about that. One of the things that they mentioned when we were at the stables that I thought was so incredible, and this probably is truer to maybe a lesser extent of other animals, but they were talking about the sensitivity of horses and how they can actually mimic and reflect, for instance, like a strong, fast heartbeat, that they tend to mimic that. So when you approach and you're able to be calm, that you can notice that in the other animal. And so it's a great way of even being able to reflect on your personal state just by being in the presence of the animal, that it can provide insight into that. And I just thought that was really incredible. So
Ah, yes, great. That's one of the most incredible things about it, is the ability for them to attune to us and reflect that back to us. As humans are mirrors, but when it comes to the horse who doesn't have an agenda, who isn't trying to put on a face or anything, they're just reacting to what they see and feel. And so they can feel your heartbeat, they can feel your anxiety, or your sadness or whatever you have going on in there. And that is, they said it at the stables, you can't lie to a horse about it. If you walk up to a horse and you're pretending to be calm and pretending to know what you're going to do, um, they detect that and they won't let you come up really close to them. They'll move their head away. And so you could try to convince the handler that things, that you're okay, you're confident or whatever. But if you don't actually feel that way, the horse will pick up on it. And it's very hard to look away from that, from a big, majestic horse who's mirroring your own emotion. That's like, okay, they're obviously picking up on something inside me. That a moment of safety and self-awareness too. Self-awareness can often be very painful and fear-inducing. So to have that in a very healing and open space, um, is again very, very beneficial.
great. Well, Kristen, thank you so much for taking the time to just share with us about some of the opportunities that we have going on here at the Turning Point, and that we're looking forward to as time goes on, and just providing us with this insight of the role that animals can play and in healing. And I think this applies certainly for survivors of trauma, but I can see how just that we all know that pets and animals can play such a huge role in our mental health in general. So thank you for just giving us some insight into some of the different ways that can work.
Of course, very happy to be here. Thank you,
Well,
Amy.
we'll be back here next Tuesday for Talk It Up Tuesday. Until then, we'll see you guys later. Bye bye.